Welcome to the Real Estate Espresso Podcast, your morning shot of what's new in the world of real estate investing. I'm your host, Victor Monash. On today's show, we're talking about your home, your castle, your property, and where your rights end. Now, if you happen to own a factory that borders on the Hudson River, and you dump millions of gallons of toxic material into the river, most people would agree that those affected should have the right to make an argument that you're negatively impacting them and the environment and you should stop. That's pretty clear. In fact, the government should step in for violating environmental regulations. That, too, is also pretty clear. But if you build a house in a neighborhood, should the neighbors who did not make an investment in your property get to dictate what you do on your property? In an effort to prevent neighbors from arguing with each other over aesthetics, cities have created rules in the zoning code. These are the same rules that the neighbors who live next door and across the street have to live by. It becomes a difficult argument that a rule was good enough for you, but is not appropriate for the neighbor. Enter the topic of variances. Variances are when the rules get bent. Sometimes it's a minor variance, like a foot or two of relief in a setback because the lot is simply too small to build a practical-sized house to meet all the setbacks. Neighbors are usually understanding in cases like this. And while a neighbor is not encroaching on your property, if you build too close to the property line, it can feel like the house next door is encroaching. If the mass of the building next door is too large, then the local wind can be altered, causing more snow to fall on your property. It might cast a shadow on the neighbor's garden. There's all kinds of reasons why your neighbor might object to your variance. Some are clearly legitimate, and others, well, we'll have to see about that. On today's show, we're talking about a property in Aylmer, Quebec. A multi-million-dollar home has got to be demolished because it was built too close to the street according to the order by a Quebec judge. The decision by the Quebec Superior Court judge comes after an 8-year saga that began when the city of Gatineau granted the homeowner permission to build the house, even though it didn't comply with the zoning laws. The nearly $3 million home was built 7 meters, 25 feet from the street, instead of the required 15.6 meters. Nearby residents opposed the home construction, saying it doesn't fit with the rest of the neighborhood. But the city granted the owner all of the required permits back in 2013. He believed the plans complied with the municipal rules because the city approved them. The city later found the plans were approved due to human error, since the planning official who granted them didn't actually know the relevant bylaw. And to fix that mistake, in 2014, the city council granted a minor exemption to allow the home to be closer to the street. Well, neighbors continue to challenge the existence of the house, and last week, the judge issued a 51-page decision that overturned that exemption. By allowing the exemption, the city set aside the clear regulatory standard, is what the judge wrote in his decision, adding that the city opposed demolition of the home but did not propose any other solutions. The judge also ruled that the city must cover the legal costs. The lawyer who represents 4 of the neighbors opposed to the home say they're happy with the result. The homeowner filed a separate $3.6 million lawsuit against the city, and that suit, filed in 2019, alleged that the city's planning department acted dishonestly in letting construction continue while knowing the consequences of such a decision. The city contends the initial mistakes were made by professionals that the homeowner had hired because they failed to apply the zoning law, and if the damages are awarded, the architect and the land surveyor should also be held liable. The real crux of the argument is that the home doesn't fit with the neighborhood. It's true, the home is different than the other homes in the area, but that's like saying, I don't want you here because you're not like us. Maybe someone doesn't like their skin color or their religion. That would be clearly unacceptable on numerous levels. So instead, the neighbors have banded together to try and eliminate the house on a technical argument. This takes us back to the original question. When should the neighbors have control over what happens on your property? This is not a case of dumping toxic waste into the environment. It's an argument over a 25-foot setback versus a 50-foot setback. In most zoning codes, a 25-foot setback is pretty common. It's hard to argue that the neighbors are harmed by the 25-foot setback. It's not like the city granted a 5-foot setback or 0. The city made an error. That's clear. In my view, the city bears the responsibility for making the error. Making the homeowner pay for the city's error through the destruction of a luxury home is not justice. It's arguably mob mentality at its worst. As you think about that, have an awesome rest of your day. Go make some great things happen. We'll talk to you again tomorrow.